Okay, in the last video, we talked about what this data looks like. Lots and lots of numbers. So many of them are very long lines full of numbers, organized as samples, starting with sample 0. We get all this data written into a file. It should be easy to study, right? So let's pull up a spreadsheet program like Microsoft Excel or even the free LibreOffice Calc and see what we can do. I'm going to use the LibreOffice Calc because it's here on Linux. Here's my Linux laptop. This is Ubuntu, and so it may look a little different. Here's a data file, N0RQV-8. It has the year, the month, and the day, _00, meaning it started in the 0 hour UTC. It has a letter B for a different kind of version, .text. If we right click it, we can open it with another application like LibreCalc Office. Double click. LibreCalc Office wants to know how you want to cut this thing up. You got all these different words in there. Do you want one word in each cell? How do you want to do this? What should separate the different information into different cells? Are they separated by a tab, a comma, a semicolon? In our case, it's going to be a space. It's not some other character over here. If two spaces are in a row, what do you want to do? Well, let's merge them together and make them look like one space. We don't need to have a blank cell just for a space character. And they turn them into different boxes, different cells down here below. Here's a coming example. I click OK. The spreadsheet comes up. Wow, and it is a big one. I can move the cursor around with my arrow keys, up and down, left and right. It cuts out all this information at the top into different words, and I really don't care. All this header information isn't that useful to me. What I care about is the samples down below. Starts at row 9, and if I hold down the control key and hit the down arrow on the keyboard, zoom, I go down to the bottom of all this block of text, all these filled cells, down to row 916. Wow, that was quick. So that's how many samples there are, all the way down to row 916. If I hit Control Up, I go back up to the very top. Okay, that's good. How about to the right? Here's a timestamp followed by a number, followed by a number, followed by a number. We said there were 256 of these numbers. Control right arrow key gets me all the way to the right, the top left of all this data, top right of all this data. It's not in row IQ. We're way past ABC. We're up into double characters. IR, IS, IT, IU, IV. It went all the way out to IW. Holy cow, what a bunch of data. We can go control down, and here we are at the bottom right information. I want to go back up, control up, and I want to skip a cell and then say that this is sample number 0. I enter a 0 and hit enter. On the next cell down below, I want to type plus up arrow to highlight the cell above, plus and a 1 and enter. It takes the 0 and adds 1 to it. I want to highlight that new cell we just did, Control C to copy. I want to go over here to all the data in the last row and now hit Control down to get down to the bottom. Here's that blank column. Here's the column that I'm filling. And now Shift Control up We'll highlight from here all the way back to the first one. I hit Control V to paste that copied cell into that range. It says I'm copying onto the very first cell that already has data. That's okay with me. I hit yes. And now that highlighted red group all have new calculations in them. Let's take a look. I hit over here just to get rid of that. Type in here. If I go Control down, sure enough, they're 907 is the last number, sample number. That's because there are 908 of them, and it starts with sample 0. Good. Left control left arrow gets once, twice, all the way to the left. All the way down is control down. And then I leave one blank line and say, yes, above me is frequency bin 0. I type 0 and hit enter. I move the cursor over 1 in a very similar way. I make a formula by typing plus. I hit the left arrow to highlight that cell next to me, plus 1, enter. It is added 1 to 0 and now says that's what it is. I want to copy that formula, go up into the data, Control right to get all the way out here, leave a blank line, and down here from this position, Control Shift left, highlighting all the way back to the left, and now Control V, inserting that formula. I'm stepping on that one cell that already has information in it. So I say, yes, that's okay. And now suddenly we have a whole row of numbers, and there are a lot of them. If we go up here and go Control right, we find that it goes from 0 to 255. That's just the way it should be for frequency bins. The samples are labeled and the frequency bins are labeled. Great. I want to go Control left, and I want to highlight the number 918, which highlights that whole row. Control C copies it. I go down one row. Control V writes it out again. So now I got 2 rows with a whole bunch of numbers. If I go Control right and Control right, sure enough, there it is. It's the same information. I want to erase all these numbers all the way back to 128 on the second row. I'm using Shift and highlighting all those cells with the arrow key going left all the way back to including 128. From 128 all the way up to 255, I'm going to hit now that they're highlighted, hit delete. I removed half of that second row of numbers. What that allows me to do, I just hit a down arrow and it went down from where I started. Control left arrow gets me all the way back here. They start at 0, but the top row goes Control right all the way out to 255. Control left brings me back. The second row, though, is shorter. Control right takes me all the way out to 127. And so that's just a fast way to move right and left hundreds of, or at least 100 different cells real quickly. All right, let's finally start looking at some data. I want to go Control up, Control up, Control up, all the way up to the top of the data, Control right all the way out to here. And I want to take the very top row of sample data. Here I am at frequency bin 255. I'm going to start from the other side. Control left all the way over to here. I'm going to highlight, skip the timestamp and go over one. Now, Control Shift to highlight, and now arrow key to the right highlights that whole top row, but not the timestamp of all that data. Let's take a look at that. I want to make a graph. This is the little symbol to insert a chart. I click that left mouse with all that highlighted data. It says, what kind of graph do you want? I say the default bar column graph is just fine. I hit finish, and there's a graph. Before we showed what a spectrum looks like, it kind of starts off at low frequencies with a low value. Up at high frequencies, it has a low value. And in the middle, there's some wiggly pattern. And in fact, because of the SDR radio, there might be a little spike at the very center frequency. Interesting. Okay. I'm going to click outside of that graph, and that kind of freezes it in place. That's not really what I want to do. Let me highlight the graph once by left clicking, holding down. I have a kind of a fist, and with the left arrow key, I can move that over to the side so it doesn't step on these numbers. So that's what the very zero column of zero data sample looks like, at least in frequency. Let's go down here and take a look at the bottom one. Control down gets me down to the bottom. Control left gets me over to the timestamp. I want to move right one to get off the timestamp. I don't want to plot a chart of a timestamp. Control Shift starts the highlighting. Control Shift right highlights that whole bottom sample. I go up to the little symbol to make a graph. I insert a chart. I say whatever you want is just fine with me. And here's a very similar chart with a lot of frequency stuff. It starts out low, it ends out low, it's got 3 bumps, and it even has a little spike in the middle. I can see a fist now where my cursor is. Left mouse, oh, that's the wrong one to move. Let me put a bump over here and find that little fist, and now I can drag it over. Oh, but I have to grab it from the other side. Grab it from this side so it'll reach, and I can move it off the numbers. Okay, so that's what the bottom, the last sample, sample 907, it turns out, looks like this. Interesting. Well, I didn't see a whole lot of information in these two plots, but I have been to the future and I come back with information. Having explored this file before, I suggest we go take a look at sample number 495. Let's see what that looks like. I'm going to use an up arrow. I can use page up and page down to go even faster to get all the way up here to sample 495. There's sample 495. I go left over to the data. I go control left to get to the timestamp, right once. Now control shift to highlight with a right arrow key highlights the whole row of data. We go up to the little symbol to make a graph, left click. Whatever it wants to make is fine with me, and it creates a graph like this. This looks a lot like the other ones. It's kind of peaceful and quiet. I don't see any unusual shapes in here. But in the future, I saw something else at 264. So sample 264, what does it look like? I use page up to go quickly. 264 is right about here. I go control left, and here I am at the timestamp. Right once, because I don't want to make a graph with a timestamp. Control Shift right arrow highlights the whole data sample of 256 numbers. Let's make a graph. Left click. Whatever form you want is just fine with me. And we get a graph, and this one's slightly different. It starts out in low frequencies with low values and high frequencies with low values. It has 3 bumps. It has a little spike, but it has a little unusual wiggle here. Something's going on there. Interesting. I'm going to move this just off all the other numbers. Get the fist, left arrow, and drag over to here. Okay, that's an interesting graph. What's another one from the future? In the future, I said sample 757 looked like it was worthy of things. 757. You guys in video land can find them faster than I can. Control left gets me here. Control left gets me here. There's the timestamp. I go right once. Control Shift right arrow highlights all that data, 256 numbers. Left click on the little icon. I say yes. What you want to make is fine. And here's another graph. It's got the regular shape. It's got a little spike in the middle, but something's going on here. Interesting. There's some data, an unusual little bump that wasn't there before at the other samples. I'm going to put my fist on this part, left arrow on the mouse, left button on the mouse, and drag this out of the way so it's not stepping on the numbers. Okay, that one looks interesting. Okay. Okay, let's go look at some frequency bins through time. One frequency bin, but how does it act during all the different samples that it had? Let's go down to the bottom with control down. We can hit control. We can hit control left, and find over to the right once to find frequency bin 0. I want to go up to the top, control up. I don't want all this header information. I want the very sample 0 in frequency bin 0. Now we're going to make a vertical column of data. Control Shift and now down highlights all that data in frequency bin 0 for all the samples in time. Let's go up to that little icon to make a graph. Left click. I say, sure, whatever you want. And we get a graph in time. I'm going to move it off the numbers and put it down here. It has a whole bunch of grass going up and down, bumping around. Goes along here, goes down a little bit, goes up a little bit, goes down a little bit, goes up a little bit, and then goes even deeper and has a little bump. Okay, very interesting. No dramatic bumps in this territory anywhere. Let's look at another one. If we look at the bottom cell here, go all the way to the right with control right, go all the way, yes, I want to go all the way up and start at the top, and now do control shift down to highlight the last frequency bin 255 for all the samples. Highlight it here with insert chart. I say yes, and I'm going to just move this guy off all the numbers. I thought. There we go. Got to get the fist right. Okay, what does it look like? In time, starting with sample 0, it goes bouncing along here and has a bunch of noise. I call it, it looks like grass to me. And then it comes down, it goes up, it goes down, it has a little bump, it goes down a little deeper in here. That's much like what we just saw. But I have been to the future, and I think you should go. I'm giving you a hint. Let's go look at frequency bin 106. I get into this row of numbers. I go control left. I go control left all the way over here. I go down one row. I can control right, and I get up to 127 anyway. Let's go find frequency bin 106. Here we are. This is the last sample's frequency bin 106. I want to go up to the top. Now I want to go control shift down to highlight that whole row ending up here down on the bottom. I go up here to the top and say yes, insert a chart. However you want to make it is just fine with me. I can take that and drag, if I get a fist, there we go, left mouse to bring it down. This one looks a little different. Remember all the grass we had along here? Suddenly there's a great big bump out of nowhere. There was some energy arriving during these samples from here to here, at least in this frequency bin. It goes along, it goes down, it goes up, it goes down, it goes up. It seems to go up a little higher, down than over here. Well, that's an interesting frequency bin to look at. What's another one to look at? I say you should go look at 143. I get down to this second row. I go control right. That gets me halfway across. Let's go up here down to 143. This is the last sample, frequency bin 143. We go control, I go control up to the top. Now I come down with control shift down to get down to the bottom, highlighting that whole column. We go up here and make a graph. We say, yes, that's a fine way to make a graph. And then I'm just going to drag it down off the numbers and put it right over here. Okay, this time it starts out in the samples and it's all kind of nothing. There's no bump here like the last graph we did. It goes down, it goes up, it goes down, it goes way up. Wow, an interesting bump here in this column, frequency bin 143. And it goes down and wobbles along. So at certain times, we can see graphs that have hydrogen information in them. You have to know where to look or just keep looking. It shows up kind of as bumps or wiggles. Here in time, we saw it like this. If I go back to the old graphs, control right, we saw frequency graphs like this one. I'll move over here so we can see the graph. This one had no interesting information in it. But if I go up here and then go page up, we have a graph here that had a little bump on it. Up here in the upper right, we kind of knew where to look then in frequency bins. If we go up again, we saw another one that was interesting. Oh, here was the middle one, and it had no exciting things going on. So the hydrogen comes and goes as far as collecting the energy. As I go up, here was another graph we found of one sample, and it showed some energy here at about frequency bin 106, maybe even higher. Yeah. Okay, interesting. But if we kept going up to the very first sample, turns out in this case, we didn't see any great hydrogen going on. So yes, indeed, this data can be viewed directly using a spreadsheet program like Excel or LibreCalc's Office. We can see some indication of the hydrogen, but there's a whole lot of button pushing and things going on to do this. I would have to look at every cell. There's probably ways to automate that. But I think I want to do even some more math on it. So yes, we said that all the radio data is in a file. We should be able to study it with a spreadsheet. That wasn't so easy as I thought it might be. See you in the next video.